morning, and welcome to Morning Movie News, where yesterday the whitewashing discussion in Hollywood took a very gossipy turn, where Tilda Swinton decided to release her private emails with Margaret Cho in response to Margaret Cho basically saying that she got into a fight with Tilda Swinton over Tilda Swinton's casting as the Ancient One in Doctor Strange. It was a public relations nightmare, and at the end of the day, I don't really think very much was resolved. But let's discuss. I think both of them aren't doing a very good job representing the situation, and we should move on. We should go back to George Takei, who's doing a great job fixing this. All right, so anyway, Margaret Cho, of course, Margaret Cho hasn't even been leading the charge against whitewashing in Hollywood, so I'm not quite sure why Tilda Swinton reached out to her, although Tilda Swinton apparently said she is a fan. But anyway, if I were Tilda Swinton, I would have gone to George Takei or Constance Wu, of course, who really slammed the Great Wall, But I mean, I think Tilda Swinton could have just, looked inward and figured out the problem anyway. So here was the discussion. Tilda Swinton says, "Oh, hey, Margaret Cho, I feel really bad that everybody's upset about my casting as the Ancient One. I don't think they quite understand what's going on here, what Marvel's trying to do. And do you think maybe, this was weird, do you think you could talk to people and get them to, stop being upset about it? And also explain to me," it was such a white response, "Oh, why are you so upset? Could you, it seems like unreasonable to me. Could you tell me why you're offended?" But at the same time, you're not genuinely asking. In reality, you're challenging the person to prove why they have a right to be upset. So I think Margaret Cho was pretty polite about it, but not very convincing. And, she went into the basic things of you're taking away roles and characters that are meant that, we can't even get other roles, but roles that are specifically created, as Asian, we're losing even those, right? I think it's a legitimate criticism, okay? And then so Tilda Swinton writes back and says, "Oh, well, Marvel was trying to do something different and not go with stereotypes and reinforce stereotypes of the old Asian master or the dragon lady. And I thought it was really exciting to have a female character who wasn't in a bikini and in her 20s. I thought it was so cool. And she still kicked butt and was powerful and was the teacher." And I have to say, on that regard, yes, that was cool. But, Tilda Swinton's advancement for women was at the expense of Asians as a group. So it's is there any camaraderie amongst discriminated against groups, or is everyone out for themselves, I guess? I think everyone should support everybody. And also, let's not forget, and also I have to say, Tilda Swinton did a great job in Doctor Strange. I loved her performance. It's just, as I said in my review, love the movie, but it is weird to watch a movie that takes place in Nepal and have nobody from that region, involved, and you can say Wong all you want, but he's like the sideiest of side characters, to have none of them involved in the storytelling. It's really crazy. It's wow, all right, only in Hollywood. Only in mainstream Hollywood. But the real reason is because, of course, China doesn't like Tibet, and they don't want to, and so, Marvel had to protect their Chinese box office numbers. It's that simple. But, of course, nobody will actually say that's the reason why it was done. So we're actually just dancing around, the situation. So, but, they could have given Wong a bigger role. So there's some blame to go around to everyone. But anyway, Margaret Cho, I think, very nicely points out, well, you can avoid the stereotypes of, the old kung fu wise master or the dragon lady, but still have it be an Asian character, right? You can just have it be a cool, hip Asian character, right? Because, I think she said something like, throw out the Asian with the bathwater, the baby with the bathwater, kind of use that whole idea. And I thought that was a pretty good argument. But so Tilda Swinton then comes back and says, just so you know, I made Snowpiercer. I forget the name of the South Korean filmmaker's name. It's Park Hang Yo or something. And he's and I'm making another movie with him, and I'm producing a movie that Steven Yeun from The Walking Dead is starring in. And it's that's nice, but it doesn't change what you can't be I don't think you can go into court and be I know I committed a crime, but I also volunteered on Saturday, so how about they cancel each other out? It's no. So anyway, I'm very curious to hear what you guys think of this. And I thought it was very crazy that Tilda Swinton released the emails. That's how many times are emails going to get people in trouble, right? Pick up the phone or better yet, have the conversation in person, and don't have delicate conversations with people you don't know, because then there's no ramifications if they turn on you. It's just really crazy. And Margaret Cho, to some degree, did start it by publicly discussing it, even though Tilda Swinton said in her email, which of course is a binding contract, right, Tilda? Not to keep it private. She said, please don't discuss this. Let's keep it private between us. And I'm like, if you're a fan of Margaret Cho, how do you not know that she's not going to listen to that? It's crazy. I'm like, you just lied and said you were a fan. Nice try. All right, but I still like Tilda Swinton. I like Margaret Cho. I don't think Margaret Cho is around enough anymore for me to be like, yeah, Margaret Cho. But the whole thing's kind of unfortunate, and it's also kind of unfortunate that we just went past it because the movie was great. But that's the way the world works, and so I think that on a positive note, George Takei's done a great job getting Asian characters into movies and TV. There's been just a tsunami of them after what happened at the Oscars. And I'm very excited, for instance, for Michelle Yeoh to lead up the new Star Trek series. It's very exciting. All right, so anyway, let's go to the next story of the day. And Denis Villeneuve. Oh, his star is rising fast suddenly. Couldn't happen to a better director. Love the guy, even though I don't always love his work. But I love Prisoners. I just think he's just such a talented director. Didn't love Arrival so much, but even Sicario, which I didn't like. I liked the going into Mexico sequence. I thought that was really expertly done. The guy's got skills. So anyway, Denis Villeneuve, he's done Arrival. That's a really hot movie right now. He's doing the upcoming Blade Runner, which is even hotter. And so now Legendary, the home of genre filmmaking, fan filmmaking, has recently acquired the rights to remake Dune, and they want Denis Villeneuve to do it. And I think that's a really great matching of director to material. I'd be like, what about another Blade Runner, right? I mean, Denis Villeneuve, he hops around a lot, but maybe that could make him like a Christopher Nolan type guy. I don't know. If anyone can like raise a star, I think Legendary would do quite a good job with it. Blade Runner's over at Warner Brothers, and they're pretty good with filmmakers. But Jordan Vogt-Roberts is doing the upcoming Kong Skull Island for Legendary, and that looks so good. So that's a pretty good team over there. I think Legendary is a good place for Denis Villeneuve to make some friends. Now, as for Dune itself, Dune is a cult hit. David Lynch directed the film a couple of years back, I think like in the 80s, cult hit. I've never seen it, to be perfectly fair, to be perfectly honest, and a lot of people haven't seen Dune, but everybody's heard of Dune, and that's why Legendary purchased it, because they're like, it has name recognition, and I can say cult hit, but then I have a chance to redefine it with Denis Villeneuve. And I think actually Dune is very similar to Blade Runner in that manner. I've seen Blade Runner. I think Blade Runner, much more high-profile film than Dune. But I think that Blade Runner is unknown to still many, and it was very cerebral, and I think, and also not a big hit when it was released. So I think that, but a bigger hit than Dune. But I think that, the studio is interested in the name recognition, and of course with Blade Runner that Harrison Ford's part of the package, but Dune, I don't think they're going to really worry about bringing anybody over. They'll probably have like maybe in supporting, just so fans can be like, ooh, the cult fans. But I think that it's from Blade Runner to Dune makes a lot of sense, and I'm excited for Denis Villeneuve. But I think that he's got to get a crowd pleaser in there, and by that I mean a mainstream crowd pleaser. I think Arrival comes a little bit close because of the twist. But I think the twist is very unsatisfying to many, which is why it's not a huge hit. I know that some of you love it, but I know a lot of people who don't love it. So I think if he wants to get to a Nolan level, which of course is the goal, right? I think that he's got to get slightly more mainstream, which has always tripped up Nolan sometimes, to be fair. But the fact that people would know the name Denis Villeneuve is pretty awesome, right? Okay? All right, so that's the second story of the day. Now, the third story of the day is a sneak peek of how the box office is shaping up for the Christmas holiday, because it's pretty interesting. All right, so Rogue One is doing extremely well and is looking to win the weekend once more. So again, this is a 6-day weekend. These numbers are for 6 days, starting on Wednesday. So Rogue One is expected to do 90 to 100 million. That would be amazing. That would be very, very strong. It'll be interesting to see if it holds as well as The Force Awakens did, which held 40% in its second weekend. Now, I don't know how much I don't think that includes the whole 6-day run, so we'll have to see what Rogue One's 3-day haul is for Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but that is Christmas. That's Christmas Eve and Christmas this year, so there should be a lot of movie going on that day. It's historically a big movie going day. Have you picked your movie? I'll be seeing Passengers. That's my Christmas Day movie. So anyway, Rogue One, 90 to 100. Then Sing is doing extremely well. It's going to be right behind it at 80. So that's a big hit for Illumination Entertainment. Very exciting. But then Passengers and Assassin's Creed are struggling. Wait until you hear this. So for the 6 days, so keep in mind, 90 and 80 for Rogue One and Sing. Then Passengers, Sony is saying 30 to 40, but other studios are saying we think it's going to come in at 25. They all kind of keep an eye on each other. That's so bad considering how much they spent on that movie. 110 million, a decent amount of the 30 million Jennifer Lawrence and 30 to 40 million Jennifer Lawrence and Chris Pratt's salaries. She says she gets part of the profit of the film, but boy, she's gonna have to work harder. She's working pretty hard to promote the movie, to be fair. She and Chris Pratt are both working very hard to promote it. But wow, if she wants to take any extra money home, they're going to have to really push it overseas. And overseas is going to have to save Passengers if that's indeed what it opens at. And then Assassin's Creed is also going to need the foreign market to save it because, and Ubisoft, remember they admitted they were like, we don't expect to make any money on this. And they were right because it's only expected to open over 6 days with 20 million. And that cost 125 million to make. That's just a disaster. Why him? No one's even bothering with projections for that movie for the 6 days. And then also keep in mind that it's going to further erode Passengers and Assassin's Creed's audiences are Fences in La La Land, which go wide on Christmas Day, but then also in New York and Los Angeles, which are big movie-going capitals. When movies make money, the big movie-going capitals are New York and Los Angeles, basically the coasts. Atlanta is a very big movie-going population. Sometimes in Texas they do pretty well. Chicago's known to get on the map, and sometimes Orlando. But those are where, it's usually the New York and LA theaters are where you're really getting most of your money. Occasionally something like American Sniper will come out and a Midwest movie theater will pop into the top 10 grossing theaters, but it's usually New York and LA. And DC. Washington, DC is a big movie-going location. But anyway, hitting New York and LA and eating into the box office and eating into the audience available is Silence, Live by Night, Patriots Day, Hidden Figures, 20th Century Women, and A Monster Calls. So as you can see, people have a lot to choose from this holiday. And a lot of that is just qualifying runs for those movies so they can be up for this year's Oscars. Although Live by Night and Silence maybe should have waited for next year. All right, so let's look at the viewer question. This is from Anthony Smith, a.k.a. David Niven. I always see his avatar, and I'm like, someone else loves David Niven. All right, so anyway, Anthony says, I have a question, Grace. Disney established a new box office record this year by being the first movie studio to reach $7 billion. Woo! My question is this. Next year, Disney might be able to reach similar numbers with all their big movies, but does that include the Spider-Man movie, Spider-Man Homecoming? Does the box office revenue from Spider-Man count in any way as part of Disney's annual box office earnings? Great question. And the answer is no, it does not. That is a Sony release. And you can see that Sony is responsible for the ad campaign, and that's why it's not quite perfect. But it's very interesting, and Sony, of course, will be getting all that money. I mean, I think there might be maybe a little bit of a split, but when everybody's counting, like behind the table, Sony might cut Marvel a check, but when anyone's doing the box office tally for the year publicly, it goes into Sony's category, and Sony sure could use it. I mean, Passengers is theirs. Yikes. So anyway, you might wonder then, well, why would Disney do this? Why would Marvel help the Spider-Man Homecoming film if they don't get that box office? They don't get credit for it. Well, they can use it in so many other places. For instance, they were able to use Spider-Man in their own movie, Civil War, and Sony didn't get any of that money, right? At least, up front. And it was a huge plus for Civil War. It was a big thing that made people want to see the movie. It was a big talking point. And I wouldn't be surprised if Spider-Man shows up in Infinity War. And also maybe other Marvel movies he could cameo, right? I mean, so if the character's popular, if he finally is done right, because Marvel's helping, that will be a resource for them. Then, of course, there's the Disney XD animated series, so they can use him on their networks. They can also use him in their theme parks. They can have merchandise with Spider-Man. And, of course, they have the comics, which they would like to see do very well. Spider-Man is a cornerstone of Marvel Comics. So there's a lot in it for, they can't write off everyone like they have the X-Men and the Fantastic Four, right? It's so sad what's happened to the X-Men. So sad. They're going to be rebooting the X-Men titles. Doesn't look very good, but I'll be reading them. I'll try it again. It's so sad. I had to drop all the X-Men titles. I feel really bad about it because they're just so horrible, after Bendis left them. But I'm hoping that with this new reboot yet again, maybe they get a little bit better. But anyway, Spider-Man, as I've said, Sony owns part of the character. Marvel's never getting that back, so they're working together to make sure that everybody benefits. Because they're like, you can't, Sony, you're ruining our really valuable character that we share, and if your half goes down, so does mine. So that's my answer to your question, Anthony Smith. Thank you so much for asking it. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in today. Please write down below what you think of today's top 3 stories, Anthony's viewer question, anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, and any questions that you might have. All right, thanks for watching. Bye.